Morning.
Yes, Peter, how are you?
I'm fine.
Okay. So we are going to begin our lesson as we are waiting for the others to join us because time is not on our side. Hope you can see my screen. Peter, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So today we are going to look at the pre-colonial trade in the interior of East Africa. My name is Teacher Joseph. My contacts are there and my Gmail. So we want us to exhaust and understand the pre-colonial trade in the interior of East Africa. And when we talk about the pre-colonial trade in the interior of East Africa, we are going to look at slave trade, we are going to look at the long distance trade, and we shall also look at the Indian Ocean trade. So today we are going to start with the long distance trade. But we are seeing that, as you can see on my screen, that before the 19th century, African societies carried out some trade amongst themselves. This was because no society produced all it needed to survive. And we see that this internal trade was always conducted on the barter system, exchange of goods for goods. I think you know what we call barter system, Peter. Peter, are you there?
Yes.
So those days, the system of trade that we had, it was called barter system. You exchange one good for another good. For instance, you need a laptop. For me, I have a woofer. I give you my woofer. Or I give you my woofer, you give me a laptop. Things like that. So it was called barter system. But we are seeing that, however, around the first half of the 19th century, long distance trade developed. Why do we call it long distance trade? Because people moved for longer distances to trade. The Africans moved from the interior of the East Africa to the coast, and even the Arabs, they could move from the coast into the interior of East Africa. That's why we call it longer distance trade, because they traveled longer distances. And we are going to see that how could they move? We see that they moved in what we call caravans. And when we talk about the long distance trade, sometimes we can call it the caravan trade. So if you find a question and they're asking you to give the reasons for the growth of the caravan trade, they are talking about the long distance. Oh, Peter, you're getting me?
Yes.
Okay. So I was saying that long distance trade, we can as well call it the caravan trade. You know a caravan?
I think a collect a caravan. I'm not sure how to explain it, though I do have an idea about it.
We see that when we talk about a caravan, these people used to move in groups. They used to move in groups. For instance, I'm trying to look for you a certain picture which can clearly describe a caravan trade, because they used to move in groups. But let us continue. So like I've said, when we talk about the pre-colonial trade, the interior of East Africa, we have long distance trade. We shall look at slave trade. We shall look at the Indian Ocean trade. So today, our focus is about the long distance trade. like I was saying, we need to know what was the long distance trade. We are seeing that it was called pre-colonial caravan trade, like I said. It was the trade that was carried out between the coastal merchants and the interior tribes. When I talk about interior, those people who are inside East Africa, the tribes which were inside the East Africa. So we see that traders, they covered longer distances from the interior to the coast. That's why we call it long distance trade, because they traveled longer distances. You can imagine traveling from where do you stay, Emma? Emma?
Luzira.
Hey, imagine traveling from Luzira up to the Indian Ocean. You are taking some goods from Luzira up to the Indian Ocean because they could meet these Arabs at the coast. So that's why we called it the long distance trade. So we see that long distances to be covered in they were to be covered in caravans between 100 to 1,000 men. So I talked about caravans, and I told you that these people, they moved in groups. They couldn't, one person couldn't move alone. They could move in groups because, as you know, when you move in groups, you cannot get tired. Just like you see those people who normally go to Namugongo. They normally move in groups. Why? Because they don't want to get tired. If you're moving a longer distance, you have to move in a caravan. You must move in groups. So these people, they also moved in groups because they were traveling longer distances. So we are seeing that they traveled between 100 to 1,000 men. We see that this always took months or even a year before they could reach the coast and back to the interior. So you can see, for instance, if you are to travel from Luzira up to the Indian Ocean, how many months can you take? How many days can you take? So that was all about the long distance trade. And we have that map which is trying to show us the trade routes. Those arrows are trying to show us the trade routes from the coast of Zanzibar, as you can see, up to the interior. They can move from Zanzibar, they enter Uganda, they go to Kenya, they go to Tanzania. Still, we see that the main participants, when you are talking about long distance trade, you must know who are the main participants, what were the main exports, what were the main imports, what was the mode of exchange, what were the trade centers. You need to know all that, Peter. So we see that the main participants in this trade, there were the Nyamwezi, the Kamba, Yao, Chaga, the Kikuyu, the Baganda, Banyoro, and the Luo. Those were the main participants who were in this trade. And these traded with the Arabs and the Swahili people at the coast. So they traded the Arabs and the Swahili people. Remember, we see that the people who first came to the East African coast, there were the Arabs and the Persians, because they came at around 1000 to 1500 AD. Isn't it, Peter? Peter, are you there?
Yes.
Okay. So we see that the Arabs were the first occupants to come to the East African coast. So we see that these Arabs, they traded with these so-called Swahili people at the coast, goods from the interior. Like I said, you need to know who are the main participants, what were the main exports, what were the main imports. So goods from the interior, those goods which came from the interior of East Africa. It was ivory, animals, skins, slaves, gold. They brought the beeswax, they brought salt, and even copper. We see that they were all exchanged for goods like beads, guns, mirrors, clothes, So these Africans, they could bring, for instance, they bring gold, they give them mirrors. They bring beeswax, they give them guns. They bring salt, they give them clothes. Remember, it was barter trade. Altogether, Peter.
Yes.
Yes. So now we need to know what were the reasons for the development of the long distance trade. What brought about this long distance trade? Number one, we see it happened because of the cooperation between the interior tribes and the coastal people. These people, they cooperated. Those ones in the interior and those ones at the coast. Because when you look at this map, the people at the coast, we are talking about these people around the Indian Ocean trade. They cooperated with these other people. They cooperated with these other people, these other tribes we have talked about, the Banyoro, the Baganda, the Nyamwezi, the Luo, the Kamba. They cooperated with these other people who are at the coast. So this facilitated the smooth running of this trade because there was cooperation. And if cooperation wasn't there, they couldn't have traded these goods. So point number two, there was a presence of already developed coastal towns, which acted as trading centers. Igi Mombasa. There were towns, coastal towns, the towns at the coast. These towns, they acted as trading centers. So if these towns weren't there, this trade could not be, it couldn't have happened. So it was taking place because of the development of these coastal trading centers. We are also seeing that the availability of guns helped in raiding of villages for slaves and the hunting of elephants. The availability of guns. Remember, like we have seen that the goods from the interior, it was ivory, animal skins, slaves, gold, beeswax, salt, and even copper. We are seeing that these Arabs, they brought beads, guns, mirrors, clothes, glass. So our point is the availability of guns. And we're seeing that these Arabs, they gave these Africans guns, and these guns helped them to raid villages such that they could get slaves. They used these guns to kill animals such that they could get ivory. So the availability of guns, it enabled the development of long distance trade. We're also seeing that another reason for the development of the long distance trade, the good and favorable climate, it encouraged trade throughout the year. Climate was favorable for this trade. So as long as climate is favorable, business can move on. So that favorable climate, it led to the development of this trade. We are seeing that also the development in transport system, e.g., use of donkeys, which is the movement of traders. Do you know donkey, Peter? Just hope you have just joined. Can you unmute your microphone and talk to me? Hope.
Yes.
Okay. So Hope, we are looking at the pre-colonial trade in East Africa. It is okay, you can unmute your microphone. It's okay? Because we need to interact. Unmute your microphone. So I was saying that we are looking at the pre-colonial trade in East Africa, and we have seen that this so-called pre-colonial trade, it involved slave trade, it involved long distance trade, it involved the Indian Ocean trade. And we have said that before the 19th century, African societies carried out some trade amongst themselves. And this trade, it was always conducted on barter system, exchange of goods for goods. And we have also seen that this trade, sometimes we call it the caravan trade. Caravan trade. When we talk about the caravan trade, we are looking at people moving in groups. They could move in groups. And why do we call it long distance trade? Because they traveled longer distances from the interior of East Africa to the coast, or from the coast to the or from the coast to the interior. So Peter had went off. Come back. So we're looking at the reasons for the development of this trade, the long distance trade or the caravan trade. Caravan, I repeat, sometimes it is called the caravan trade. You can find the question which is asking for the reasons, give the reasons or explain the reasons for the development, growth and development of the caravan trade. We are talking about the long distance trade. Give the reasons for the development of the long distance trade. It is all the same. If it is not called long distance trade, it is called the caravan trade. So we have seen cooperation between the interior tribes and the coastal people. It facilitated the smooth running of this trade. We have seen the presence of already developed coastal towns to lead to the development of this trade. We have seen also the availability of guns. It also helped in the trading, in the raiding of villages, because guns were there. So they used these guns to kill the elephants such that they can get ivory, which ivory they had to give to the Arabs, and then the Arabs give them guns, they give them mirrors, they give them beads, and even some other stuff like clothes. So we have also seen the good and favorable climate encouraged trade throughout the year. Climate was favorable. Development in transport system, the use of donkeys. Remember, they traveled for longer distances, so which means that they needed some aid in transport system. So they used the donkeys to move from the interior to the coast, and then from the coast to the interior. So furthermore, let me hope that you can see my screen. Yes, hope, can you see my screen? Hope, can you see my screen? Okay. We are seeing that the trade developed because of several tribes that produced surplus goods, which enabled them to offer some for sale, surplus goods. Some tribes offered these so-called surplus goods. What do we mean by a surplus good? Peter, what is a surplus good?
I think what remains from when they are done selling what they are expected to sell.
What?
I think the goods that remain after they are done selling what they had come to sell. I think that's what we call surplus goods.
Okay. Yes, Hope. What do we mean by surplus goods? Hope. Hope you are too quiet. Unmute your microphone. We are in a lesson. So, just like Peter has said surplus. When we talk about surplus, it is the amount of something left over when requirements have been met. Yes, Hope?
Okay.
Yes, Hope?
It was my network, but I wanted to answer what surplus goods are. Surplus goods is the amount of an asset or resource that exceeds the portion that actively raised.
Okay. Hope his network is unstable. So, just like Peter has said, or just like I was trying to explain, surplus, only that word surplus, it means the amount of something left over. The amount of something left over when requirements have been met. So that amount of something left over. So we are seeing, or our point has been, that the trade developed because of several tribes that produced surplus goods. Those goods which there were more other goods on addition of what they were meant to give the Arabs. It led to the development of the long distance trade. There was also high demand for foreign goods by African societies. High demand of foreign goods. These African societies, they needed foreign goods like guns. They had never seen guns. Remember, for them, they were using this other old system of spears, and the bows and arrows, using old stones. So the demand of guns, the demand of clothes, it also led to the development of the long distance trade. We're also seeing that the arrival of the Portuguese at the coast within the period of 1500 AD also forced the Arabs to abandon the Indian Ocean trade and they had to join the long distance trade. When we talk about the Indian Ocean trade, as you're going to see it, this trade was around the Indian Ocean. These Arabs, for them, when they came, they concentrated around the coast. They could not enter into the interior of East Africa. So when the Arabs came, when the Portuguese, remember, the Arabs were the first people to come, the Arabs and Persians, they were the first people to come on the East African coast. So the Portuguese later came. So when they came, they forced these Arabs to abandon the Indian Ocean trade and they had to join because there was competition now. Some other people had come. When you get into a competitive market, you have to devise means of how you can continue to be in business. So these Arabs, they had to go inside the interior of East Africa because the Portuguese had come. So this led to the development of the long distance trade. The opening of trade routes in the interior of East Africa enabled the traders to reach all corners of East Africa for trade. Trade routes were being developed because at first there were no trade routes. That's why these Arabs were dealing with the so-called Indian Ocean trade. They were always around the coast because there were no routes. There were no routes. So after the development or the opening of trade routes in the interior, demarcated routes, this enabled traders to reach all corners of Africa, of East Africa. We are also seeing that availability of trade items also led to the development of the long distance trade. For example, slaves were there, ivory was there, beeswax was there, and so many others. So the availability of these items, as long as the items are there, that means that trade had to continue going on. We are also seeing that the abolition of slave trade in West Africa, it forced many Europeans to resort to East Africa, where slave trade had not yet been abolished. In West Africa, they had abolished slave trade. So these Europeans, they had to come to the coast because at the East African coast, slave trade was still going on. So when they came, they knew that they could get slaves at around the coast. So this also, it was another factor for the development of the long distance trade. We are also seeing that some interior tribes had that traditional love for traveling longer distances. For example, the Nyamwezi, they loved moving for longer distances because it was their tradition to move in longer distances. It was their tradition. So this also facilitated the development of the long distance trade because these tribes, for instance, the Nyamwezi, they had that tradition of traveling for longer distances. Division of labor among the African societies encouraged men to get involved in trade. When we talk about division of labor, here we are saying that you divide labor accordingly. For instance, this group, for it is going to look for slaves. This group is going to look for ivory. This group is going to look for the beeswax. Then after getting all those items, we start traveling to the coast. So division of labor among the African societies encouraged the men to get involved in the trade. The development of Swahili as a business language made it easier for people to communicate in trade. Remember, Swahili came into existence because of the intermarriage between the coastal people and the Arabs. So that intermarriage, it brought about the Swahili. So we are seeing that now they're getting a language which can combine them, the Arabs and even these other people from the coast and even from the interior. Now they have got a language which they can easily use. Remember, for us who are believers, I don't know whether you've ever heard of the story in the Bible, the Tower of Babel. Have you ever heard of that story, Peter?
Yes, please.
Have you heard of the story in the Bible, the Tower of Babel?
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the story, the Tower of Babel?
It's something related to slaves, but I don't quite remember a story properly. It's been long.
Okay. In summary, we are seeing that at first we're living in one village. All of us, black and white, we're living in one place. So because we're living in one place, people wondered, why is it that this God we are worshiping is up there and we have some problems? We need to tell him our problems. So what they did, they constructed a tower. They constructed this tower because they wanted to reach God to deliver their problems. They wanted to see him physically because they knew that he was up there in the sky. So they constructed a very long tower to reach the sky. So when God saw what they were doing, he had to stop them. So how could he stop them? He stopped them by giving them different languages. He gave them different languages. So one person could tell the other, give me cement. This other person is speaking Uganda. He doesn't understand cement, for instance. So the tower stopped there. I was trying to bring about that story to explain more about this other key issue of a language. When people, they have a language that they can easily use to communicate, it eases everything. So we have been saying that the development of the Swahili language or the Swahili culture as a business language, it made it easier for people to communicate in trade. And remember, it came as a result of the intermarriage between the Arabs and then the people of East Africa. We also see that the flat nature of the land enabled traders to easily move up and down looking for trade items. The flat nature of our land. Look at our land. We don't have so many mountains. Those big and how can I call them, tall mountains. So our geographical nature, it is favorable for movements. You can easily move from one place to another. We are seeing that the coming of the Indian Banyans at the coast, who influenced Indian Banyans, who influenced traders and provided loans. Who are the Indian Banyans? These are the people, these were Indians, they were businessmen who had money. In other words, they were wealthy. So when they came at the coast, they provided loans to these other traders who needed to trade. So the coming of these Indian Banyans, it facilitated or led to the development and the growth of the long distance trade. We're seeing that the presence of capable leaders, for example, the Mirambo, for example, Saidi, all these leaders, non-traders, capable leaders, Mutesa One, all those leaders. These leaders were saying that they had organized societies, and even their trade, it was organized. And at the end of the day, it led to the development and the growth of the long distance trade. The introduction of the cowrie shells as a form of currency. You know the cowrie shells? Dita, you know cowrie shell?
Yes.
Yes. Hope, do you know a cowrie shell? Hope you're too quiet. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So we are seeing that the introduction of the cowrie shells as a form of currency. Remember, at first, they were simply using barter system. They could exchange one good for another good. Now, cowrie shells were introduced. So when they were introduced, it became easier to carry out business transactions. Cowrie shells, they could use them as a medium of currency. It was like money, just like that money you have just right next to you, that 50 note, that 20 note, that 5K, that 10K. Those days they had the cowrie shell. It was their medium of currency or exchange to carry out business transactions. So it led to the development and the growth of the long distance trade. So after looking at all those reasons, we need to know the organization of the long distance trade. How was it organized? How was it organized? Remember, they ask, these are the questions that they ask about, for instance, long distance trade. They ask you about the reasons for the growth of the long distance trade, growth and development. Remember, I told you that when you don't call it long distance trade, we call it what? Who can remind me?
The Caravan Trade.
Okay, so they'll ask you reasons for the development and growth of this trade. They'll ask you about the organization of this trade, and also they normally ask about the effects. When we talk about the effects, what do we mean by effects? Hope. What do we mean by effects? Hope. What do we mean by effects?
Like how this trade affected those people.
In other words, when we talk about effects, we are talking about the results. What were the results? Results can be good and what? And bad. So that word effects, it means results. So they ask three things: reasons for the growth and development. They ask about the organization of this trade, and they also ask about the effects. In other words, the results. Now, we are looking at the organization of this trade. And when we talk about the organization, you have to keep in your mind these things. Who are the main participants? There you are talking about organization. What were the main exports? There you are talking about organization. What were the main imports? There you are talking about organization. What was the medium of exchange? What do they use? What were they using? Peter, can you tell us what was the medium of exchange, Peter, in this trade?
It was barter. It was barter trade.
Yes, apart from barter trade.
And they used cowrie shells.
Yes, very good. Then you need to know the medium of transport and also the trade centers. I've talked about these things. Let me repeat them. Remember, we are talking about the organization of the long distance trade. And I was saying, if you have to explain the organization of the long distance trade, you have to put in your mind these things. Number one, who are the main participants? Number two, what were the main exports? Number three, what were the main imports? Number four, what was the medium of exchange? Number five, what was the medium of transport? Number six, what were the trade centers? For instance, let me ask Hope, what was the medium of transport? Hope, what was the medium of transport? Can you tell us? Hope, unmute your microphone.
Like I think they moved in caravans.
Yes, very good. So there we go. The trade involved many interior tribes. We are starting with the participants. Participants, we see that it involved interior tribes, the Nyamwezi, the Kamba, the Yawo, the Chaka, and even the Baganda, plus even the Ruo. What were the other participants? These were the Arabs, because these interior tribes, they traded with the coastal Arabs. Medium of transport. Medium of transport, just like Hope has said, it was organized on caravan basis. Medium of transport, it was organized on caravan basis. Furthermore, each caravan would have over 1,000 men armed. I think you get me when I say armed. They had guns, because we have seen that they used these guns to raid villages and they get slaves. They used these guns to kill orphans and get ivory. They used these guns to kill animals and they get their skins. because these were the items that they had to give to the Arabs, such that the Arabs, they give them the items that we talked about. They could give them beads, they could give them mirrors, they could give them guns, they could give them clothes, and so many other items. Now, the other thing we talked about, what were the main exports, what were the main imports. In other words, we are looking at the goods. So the goods from the interior included ivory, included slaves, included gold, iron, implements, for instance, axes and pangas, even hoes. Whereas the goods from the coast included beads, glass, plates, clothes, swords, guns, and so many others. So you're also seeing that slaves were acquired through raids. Who can explain to us a raid? Peter, explain to us a raid. What is a raid? Peter?
A raid is when like a group of people would go and attack like a certain area to go and get a particular thing.
Hey, you attack. A raid, you attack. You can attack a person, you can attack a group of people. You forcefully take their property, or you take even those people. You have raided them. So we are seeing that slaves were acquired through raids on villages, and ivory was got through hunting of elephants. Now, hope you can see my screen. Goods from the interior. I'll try to look for you some pictures. Those are the goods from the interior. Slaves, as you can see, gold, axes, horse, ivory, and so many others. We're still looking at the organization of this trade. And we are seeing that trade was initially conducted on barter trade, medium of exchange. Medium of exchange. By the way, those things you would have noted them down. When you're talking about organization, get a pen and a paper, note down these things. I was saying that organization, these are the things that you must talk about. Participants. Are you noting? Are you noting, Peter and Hope?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. So organization, we talk about participants. Who are the people in this trade? Number two, you talk about the main exports. Main exports. Main exports, which means that main exports, these were the goods which were coming from the interior to the coast. Then main imports, goods which were the Arabs that they brought. You also talk about the medium of exchange. Medium of exchange. When they were carrying out this trade, what did they use? We have seen that they used barter system. We have seen that they used the cowrie shells. The medium of transport is another one. And also, lastly, the trade centers. We have said participants, main exports, main imports, medium of exchange, medium of transport, and even trade centers. Are we through? Okay. Okay. So we are seeing that the medium of exchange later on, cowrie shells were introduced, but these were also later replaced by small copper coins. So medium of exchange, we see that there is barter system. Barter system was later on replaced with cowrie shells, and then after cowrie shells, they were replaced by small copper coins altogether. So we're seeing that trade was controlled by the interior chiefs who negotiated with the merchants from the coast. These chiefs in the interior, we have talked about some kingdoms who had those chiefs, the Mirambo. We had Saidi, Mutesa I of Uganda. These are the people who negotiated with the Arabs. They could negotiate with them that I'm going to give you 10 slaves, you give me one gun. Okay. So trade was also conducted in trading centers along the trade routes, Igi, Ujiji, Tabora, and even Bagamoyo. Trade centers. So you need to know what were the trade centers. So those were the trade centers, and the trade centers, like I've noted there, they included Ujiji, they included Tabora, they included Bagamoyo. Okay, we're still looking at the organization. We see that the trade also involved taxation of revenue. Traders from the coast paid taxes to these local chiefs. They paid taxes. The medium of communication, by the way, we should also add that the organization, medium of communication. How did they communicate? Medium of communication. It was what? Hope. Can you tell us what was the medium of communication? Hope. What was the medium of communication? We have seen that the medium of communication, it was Swahili, because it was the business language. Swahili, it was the business language. Okay. Medium of the communication, the communication became a problem to interpreters. Remember, they also had some interpreters. They had some interpreters. So next time when we meet, we shall look at the trade routes. We shall look at the trade routes. So today we have ended there. We have been looking at the long distance trade, and we have seen that this was also called the caravan trade because people used to move in groups. It was called long distance because they traveled longer distances. And we are seeing that we have looked at the reasons for the development of this trade and even the organization. So next time when we meet, we shall look at the trade routes. I wish you a nice weekend. I request Peter to give us a closing prayer, and enjoy your weekend. Peter, give us a closing prayer.
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Lord, we thank you for this lesson. Thank you for getting us to today. Pray that you may help us understand and achieve success in all that we do, so that may live to reflect your glory. Pray through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
Father, Son, and Spirit.
Thank you, teacher.
You're welcome.